All right, this is Openstax U.S. History, Chapter 22, Section 5, Taft's Dollar Diplomacy. So we got a very brief section here, and that, of course, is the foreign policy of William Howard Taft. It kind of just serves as a bridge when talking about American foreign policy, because you had Theodore Roosevelt, who, of course, was so instrumental in doing things like constructing the Panama Canal. Taft is the president after him, and then beyond that is Woodrow Wilson, and Woodrow Wilson is known especially for U.S. involvement in World War I. Oops, too many W's. World War I, right? So Taft, this chapter is just going to talk very quickly about what his foreign policy was. Taft used something that was known as dollar diplomacy, which is a foreign policy much more based off of economics, more so than military. So whereas before we saw instances like the Spanish-American War lead to more acquisitions, Taft really is trying to shy away from that and use more of the economics on it. One way that he wants to do this, Central America is one target, Asia is also another target of Taft's spreading American influence through the economy, is to get nations to become indebted to the U.S. So that is buy other nations debt. Oops. So they are indebted, so they owe those debts to the U.S., right? And so once those nations, like those nations in Central America, once they are now in debt to the U.S., because the U.S. controls those debts, it can further control those nations, as opposed to, let's say, that nation owing money to Germany, owing money to France, owing money to Great Britain. It's also a way to get rid of that influence and only have more American influence. This was successful in the Western Hemisphere, right? So this is oust European economic control of the Western Hemisphere. And certainly by World War I, which is 1914, the U.S. has pretty firm control over the Western Hemisphere. Really countries like Great Britain, France, and Germany, they're really looking other places other than, Central and South America to exert their influence. In places like Asia, the U.S. was less successful. You still have countries like Russia and Japan, which are more successful there. That's not to say the U.S. didn't try to get more control into Asia, but it really was in Central and South America, which the United States was much more effective. Now, this era of imperialism comes to an end when World War I, or the Great War, breaks out, and we have an entire chapter dedicated to that. 1914, Europe goes to war, and in 1917, the United States goes to war. So again, just a very quick point about Taft, how he fits into this question about U.S. foreign policy in this era.